Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Big Bros podcast. My name is Ilan, and I'm joined by my lovely friend and co-host, but more importantly, we are joined today by Gerard Healy, who is a former Melbourne and Sydney Swans star who won the 1988 Brownlow Medal and later became one of the most respected voices in football media from 7 and 3AW to Fox Footy and now Sports Day on SEN. He has spent decades at the centre of the game. Gerard, thanks for coming on the Big Bros podcast.
The pleasure is all mine, fellas. It's great to see you and learn about you, and looking forward to the chat.
Pleasure is all ours. Gerard, I remember opening up my WhatsApp group chat a few weeks ago. Would have been on the eve of opening round, and I saw your Sports Day opener. I personally got a little bit emotional hearing about it, as did Jeremy, and as did a lot of people in our community. In that message, you stated, "For many in the JCOM, their lives have been grossly tormented for way too long. We have their backs, they have our love and support, even if they barrack for the wrong team." Why did you choose to address this?
Do you want the abridged version or the longer version? I'll just give you the abridged version if you like.
Oh, we got time.
We got time, yeah.
Well, I reckon I've been moved about 5 times to do it, but given it's a sports station, you've got to respect that most people tune in to hear about sport. And I did that for a long, long time until I was triggered to a point where I just had to find a way to basically get it off my chest. Is this a non-swearing podcast?
Nah, mate.
Swear away.
You say it all.
I'll get the shit off my liver. And there was plenty of it. So I found the vehicle, but let me take you through why I was sort of triggered. It started on October the 9th when I witnessed what I thought was an unbelievable disgrace, and that was the celebration of the loss of 1,200 Jewish lives in the most horrific circumstances. To witness what I saw at an iconic, at an iconic Australian structure that was clearly destined to go around the world because of its famous locale, really upset me, and the silence from the government following upset me even more. And to see a silly official, I think he was a police official, come out a couple of months later and say they weren't saying "gash the Jews," they were saying "where are the Jews," as if that was okay. And I thought, you are joking, mate. So the silence of the government really annoyed me, and I'm talking all government. And this isn't a political stance. This is just I think a stance based on what's happening to a part of Australia, and it's a serious part of Australia. You follow that up by the March Across the Bridge. Again, a famous infrastructure piece in Australia, so it's destined to and plan to go around the world, and mostly good-natured people who think that they're protesting from the heart, and I accept all of that. But when there's Hamas death flags and the chant "River to the Sea," it's only got one meaning, and that's the eradication of all Jews, and that includes Australian Jews. I mean, that's what they're hearing. So as much as in the minds of good-natured and good-hearted and well-meaning Australian people who themselves were triggered by the violence of what's going on, or what was going on over in Gaza, and I accept all that, the blowback and the impact on the Australian JCOM was never considered. No pushback from government, no support from government. The message was fairly fundamental. The Australian Jewish community aren't part of the inclusion policy. They're supplement, they're basically politically too hard. And that really upset me, and it was just so hard to work out why. And that's the question I keep asking myself. I ask it of the AFL, why, and I'll get to that. Then there was Bondi, And then there was this incredible delay, 50 odd days I think it was, before Albanese was body slammed by Dawn Fraser into submission. Now, I know there was a couple of senior AFL advisors, including one board member of a football club here in Melbourne, finally talk him into sense. But it just seemed pretty clear. It was a political decision. It wasn't the right decision. It wasn't a morality decision. It was basically based on the numbers. It was a political calculation. That's what my eyes and ears processed, and I'm sure that's what was processed by the Jewish community. And so finally, after way, way too long, it should have taken 15 seconds to make that call for the Royal Commission. And yet we went through all that nonsense. So the message is clear. The message is clear. The JCOM are irrelevant. So that's when I was really at the tipping point, like up here, and then it all settled down, which was good. And then the Iran war started. And I thought to myself, oh well, here we go again. The injustice. And we've seen it so long. The Australian JCOM have been blamed for what's been the tragedy of what's going on in Gaza. I make no political statement on that. I'm not going into the weeds there. Everybody is entitled to their view there. But what they're not entitled to do, in my view, is make the lives of Australian Jewish community, or the people in the Australian Jewish community, un-Australian and unlivable. And that's where it's got to. So after the start of the Iran war, I think it started on Saturday, and I think it was March the 1st or thereabouts. On the Monday, I finally thought enough's enough. The people I'm talking to, and the people are just average, non-Jewish heritage Australians. People like me that have grown up with either an Irish or an Anglo background, people from Europe, from Greece, from Italy, all of it, from Asia, all of these people that have all congregated and been drawn to the power of Australian rules football. And so I just know that, blokes like the Big Dipper, classic case. He was coach of the Israeli-Australian team.
Yeah.
The Israeli-Arabian Arab team.
That's right, the peace team.
The peace team.
Yeah.
And the Big Dipper at one stage, he was abused for his heritage. Shockingly abused. The Indigenous people, shockingly abused. But we've got over the top of that. But all of a sudden, based on what's happened 2 years ago, the start of the Gaza war, the JCOM have been isolated and felt abandoned. And I felt that because after the discussion, I was just talking about in my editorial, let's give some support for all of AFL supporters with Jewish heritage, Australians with Jewish heritage, and that's the first and foremost, Australians with Jewish heritage, because they're doing it tough. And maybe it might be time to stop our silence and just sitting back on the sidelines of this rampant anti-Semitism that has been almost can't quite get the right word, but it's almost been ticked off on by governments and the AFL to a lesser extent by their inaction. So I thought, bugger it, I'm going for it. I don't know where I was going with it, but I just had to get it off my chest that there are too many great Australian people with Jewish heritage that are getting, their lives have been turned upside down, and that is not, in my view, good enough. And so that's why I did it.
Oh, we thank you for that, Gerard. We thank you for voicing up about that. But, you mentioned the word there that it upset you. You used that word a few times in that piece, that it actually upset you. Why did it upset you? Why did it cut deep for you? For someone who doesn't necessarily need to have that Jewish heritage, but why did it upset you personally?
Well, look, I think I've thought about that long and hard, but I've always been super sensitive to injustice, and I've always felt I should be doing more, but I didn't do this to start a campaign. I just did this to just highlight it. But I really have felt really badly for the Australian JComp for a long, long time. It's like I rang Josh Frydenberg after the Opera House, and I didn't know him well, but I know he knows my brother well. Josh is a mad Carlton man, Matthew's a mad Melbourne man, but they have got a holiday house down at Lawn. So I rang Josh and said, mate, if there's anything that I can do, let me know. Didn't let me know, didn't hear from Josh. And then Bondi happened, same again. And he said, well, look, what about this idea? And I said, absolutely. And that is 4 or 5 of us got together, 3 or 4 of them with much, much higher worldwide credentials. They had all gold medals dangling around their necks. And we put together a steering committee to get that letter to Elbow. But Nova Peris was probably the most effective. I got a lot of names, but Nova brought the big gun down. Yeah. In came our Dorney. And Dorney went bang. And Albanese finally worked out that the politics of this thing were getting dangerous, and he decided to change. Whether he actually means it, I'm not sure.
What baffles me about the situation now, moving more towards the pre-game ceremony that the Swans held for the victims, the AFL has no issues associating itself with other causes, especially ones that involve things like inclusion, and they have no issues having a pride round. They have no issues advocating for the rights of First Nations people, and these causes are fantastic, but it's somehow, at least members of the Jewish community, felt like there's this ickiness for the AFL to want to go out and actually acknowledge that it was a Jewish terrorist attack against Jews. For someone who's been in that industry, for someone who knows the individuals and the stakeholders, I am curious, why do you think they did choose to omit that term?
I'll come back to that. I just want to complete your answer because I didn't actually get to the point. What was in it that made me do it? And it's just revisited my ageing mind. For the first time in my life, I've been embarrassed and ashamed of my country. That's why I did it. And that cut me to the quick. I was ashamed of my country for the first time. And I'm still ashamed because we haven't done anything about it. Which brings me back to your position. I've been ashamed of my sport, and I've never been ashamed. I've been one of the great voices of appreciation and admiration for my sport. I feel I've always been a promoter of AFL football. You know, I take up causes like Set the Sharon Free, and well done to Greg Swan, who's gone bang bang, the bouncer's dead, and the game is now alive again. I've been so thrilled with what Greg's done. You know, the development of Western Sydney has been one of my great causes, but they all pale into insignificance because it's a sport. There's plenty of sports, but my sport I've been ashamed of too because of their inaction on Bondi. For whatever reason, and I can't get the answer to this question I've asked a lot of heavyweights at the AFL, and it's the same question for Elbow. Why? I mean, I'm only a dumb footballer, so, you know, I might be out of my lane asking these questions. But anyway, I'm asking them because I don't care. Why didn't the AFL want to be involved in a ceremony to acknowledge the deaths of 15 people, 14 from my understanding that were Jewish, in one of the most horrific attacks on the Australian community based on targeting a Jewish ceremony, but ultimately it was an attack on Australia.
Of course.
And I just can't believe, is the JCOM politically expedient for the government, which seems really clear? Surely it can't be the same for our sport. Not my sport, not the AFL that I've promoted all these years and said how good's this sport. And unfortunately, I can't quite get an answer. There's great people in the AFL Commission. There's great people in the executive.
Still now, no answer.
Still no answer.
I don't think they have an answer.
Well, there's an answer, but I'm not sure they're happy to tell us what the answer is. And I hear, it was too late in the season and it was this and the TV networks, that's bullshit. This had to be acknowledged by our game, and it had to be acknowledged with a great enthusiasm, not a reluctance to actually send up a representative to stand on the boundary line. And this is why I would like the Swans to, and they've been taking some heat, but I think most normal people, most fair-natured people understand exactly like one of your fellow young Australian Jewish broadcasters,
Chase.
I met Chase yesterday.
Fantastic.
I was so in awe of his message. I sent it to a couple of commissioners. I sent it to the heavies at the Swans. I sent it to Dylan. I sent it to Hutchie. I sent it around the world, the footy world anyway, because I was in bed at 2 o'clock just processing this stuff, and up he popped. I said, my God, how simplistic, how beautifully accurate is that message? I thought he was a little bit light on how hard you guys are doing it out in the community, but he'll get used to it. But no, that was beautiful, and it went round and round and round. And we all know it was a great ceremony. It was a beautiful ceremony, but the fact that the Swans, for whatever reason, omitted the term Jew or Jewish was a big mistake. Yeah, it was a big mistake, and your man actually nailed it. So, I think the Swans have acknowledged that. The president, Andrew Pridham, he was devastated when he found out there was, pushback on that. And I know Pav was trying to be more inclusive, but there are times where it's not about inclusivity. Inclusivity is fantastic. I think there's not one person in the world that doesn't want inclusivity, as long as it's not fraudulent. Yeah. And it is at the moment. You can't have an inclusive policy, but if the numbers say don't include the Australian Jewish community, well, we exclude them. And that's what I'm feeling. A fraudulent DEI process. And that is dangerous. So I hope that the AFL learn. I mean, they're getting plenty of messages. Maybe I'm going to have to just hope a bit more, because they've certainly been told they're processing, and I believe that, I'm hoping that Andrew Dillon is talking to presidents. Presidents have all been talking, but I've spoken to 3 or 4 of them, and they're all excited and keen about an education process. But then you get the silence. The silence. The silence I was warned about 4 weeks ago, and it's spot on. So, we've got to work out what we want to do and what we want Australia to be. Yeah. And I was actually in church this morning, and the priest got up and asked for prayers for the crisis in the world. And I thought to myself, I bet you he doesn't know there's a crisis happening in the suburbs right now, because most people don't. I didn't. I only learnt how bad it was for the Australian JCOM when I got this tsunami of letters and emails and people telling me about what's happening, telling me how much they love Australia, how much their parents love Australia. But the tsunami of emails told me and educated me as to just how bad it is. And for that, I'm trying to actually get other people to realise there's a bloody crisis happening in Bentley. There's a crisis happening where we are now. There's a crisis happening on the other side of the bridge, and in the north and in the south and in the Jewish communities around Elstonwick and Caulfield, etc., where people can't run businesses, where the kids can't go to schools, etc. So all these things, I'm awake at night reading these emails. I'm like, oh my God, how beautiful are these emails? I'm sitting there with Lisa and reading them out to her, and she's shaking her head, I'm shaking my head. So I've learnt so much about the Australian Jewish community, so much that I love about it, but I'm thinking, my God, how are these people having to deal with this crisis? It's a silent crisis that no one is actually paying due credit to and sorting it out.
And how have you been received from your colleagues? I mean, you're in many broadcasting spaces, radio, television. Yep. How have you been received? Do you feel othered in any way?
No, not yet. No, I think I've had a few people starting to work out how serious I am, and I am serious. And I've spoken to a few, and what I'm noticing now is just people coming up and saying, keep going. Now, that didn't happen in the first week or the second week, so I don't even know where I'm going.
Are those colleagues of yours saying keeping going?
No, more people in the street and
yep.
where I swim, etc. Down the surf. I think ultimately most people, colleagues, Australians, have no idea. They don't know how bad this thing is for the Australian Jewish community. And I'm hoping that an army of people will rise up and start to say enough is a bloody enough, or words to that effect. We need to change what's happening to Australians. And I start to feel as if, I started using the word JCOM because my daughters told me, Dad, it's not the Jewish community, it's the JCOM.
There's the lingo.
It's true.
They live up in Bondi. So, Bondi happened. My daughters are in Bondi. You can imagine the thoughts. They live just behind Bondi, actually, in Bellevue Hill, but they go to Bondi every Sunday night. But I got a stern lecture. Dad, it's not the Jewish community. All our friends are from the JCOM. But I'm going to actually make an addition to that because I think this is really important. I think we need to stop calling people the JCOM or Jewish. You're bloody Australians.
Yeah.
First and foremost, Dipper's not Italian. He's Australian. You guys aren't Jewish. You're Australian with a Jewish heritage.
Yep.
Just like I'm Irish. Well, I'm actually Australian with Irish heritage. Some say more Irish than most, but nevertheless, it's just this bloody division, and I hate division in this country. If you are Australian and you operate under Australian values, if you're Muslim and you operate under Australian values, well, there's no division here. And to me, the greatest hero of this and the greatest example that we should all follow is Ahmed El Ahmed. I mean, here he is on Bondi Beach. I don't know why he was there. And there's a couple of absolute, evil lunatics on a bridge having pot shots at Australians. He didn't go, I better just check the numbers. Where'd they come from? Who were they? Oh, no. He just went bang. Moral compass, laid his life on the line. No each way bet. He knew what he was doing. He was saving Australians, not Jewish people. He was saving Australians. And it's about time we all started forgetting about people's heritage in this country. How can this country have anybody worry about heritage, given that outside of the Indigenous people, outside of the First Nations people, we're all from somewhere.
Of course.
I mean, I speak to Nova Peris, and she is the biggest supporter of the Australian Jewish community of all time.
Yeah.
She loves them and she defends them. And I've got to know her quite well. She's a mighty Australian because she knows what Australian values are and she's out there supporting them. So I don't know. As I said to Lisa at the time and my friends, I said, I don't know why, but I'm going for it. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm going to try and let's just wake everyone up. And if we have to get Elbow's megaphone out and start screaming back at him, well, bad luck, Elbow. You got your lesson a couple of days ago. You've got to treat everybody the same, and you've got to actually don't look at polls, just look at your heart. And at the present time, you can't use people for political wins. You've just got to look after Australians. no matter where they come from.
Gerard, you noted before that you didn't realise how bad it had gotten for Australian Jews. And it got me thinking about the fact that I think for a lot of Australians with Jewish heritage, there is this fear of wanting to communicate how bad it's gotten for fear of being called playing the victims again.
Yep.
And I think you mentioned Chase prior about how he could have probably mentioned how bad it's gotten. And I think, not to speak on behalf of the entire community, there is that sentiment that perhaps it's better not to acknowledge how bad it is, because
At least publicly.
We'll do it in our own circles, in our own corners, because we don't want to draw attention to it. I think there's this, whether you call it intergenerational trauma, where, the less we talk about it, the more likely we are
to feel safer.
We're not going to attract, you could say, the bad type of attention. And hopefully it just goes away. And I think, as you've alluded to, it's not just going to go away on its own. You did receive a award from Divya Abramovich from the Anti-Defamation Commission for courage. How was that for you?
Oh, I was very emotional. Yeah. Hadn't had much sleep in the lead up, so I was sort of, I've got a tendency to cry occasionally, but when things are emotional. But that was, I didn't think I deserved it, because all I did was get something off the liver, as I said. But the appreciation from the JCOM was extreme, and I was more emotional for what's happening in our country, because it was just acknowledgement of what the bad stuff that I learnt about. And I want to address some of those really serious issues you just raised outside of the award, because that was great, but unless we affect change, awards are great, but unless we can affect change, they're sort of almost meaningless. We need to make some changes. And what I've found with the Australian JCOM is very much this strategy of hope. And I come from a football ground, as you know. The worst strategy in football
is hope.
And I've spoken to a couple of senior people from the Australian JCOM. Trip myself up. And I'm trying to break down that element of hope. We need a strategy. And we need to work out what we want as a community, and I'm talking about the whole community, and what Australian JCOM need. It's not so much want. But I do very much feel that you're on the right policy by not putting your hand up to be seen as whinging, even though it's not. It's not whinging at all. I'll guarantee you 99% of Australians that were putting up with the crap you guys have been putting up with in recent times would have their hand up so much and so quickly that they'd break their fingers getting it up in the air so quickly. And so my view on this whole thing is it's not your fight. You're the victims of this thing, whether you want to know it, whether you want to accept it or not. But you are the targets. If you want to, you don't act like victims to me. You act like and courageous, resilient, sturdy Australians that are dealing with some really bad stuff at the present time. So to me, it's just an Australian argument. We, the non-JCOM Australians, we're the ones that have to fix it. Just like we were the ones who had to fix the Indigenous issue, and we, as in the abuse in sporting arenas, etc. And for the Italians that came here initially and were heavily abused when I was playing, and the Greeks and the Asians, and yet you don't hear any of that. You don't hear any of that. But because there's so many Instagram experts out there that have this view on the Gaza war, that's fine. But don't take it out on Australians.
Yeah.
It's not their fault. Not your fault. No matter what you believe that's happening overseas, it's not their fault. So my view on this is it's not you that can change this, as in the Australian Jewish community. It's the non-Australian Jewish community that can change it. And we're the ones who have to fight the cause. And we're not fighting it for you guys specifically. in my view, we're fighting it for us. Because once we let the canary in the coal mine perish, guess what? Society starts to break down. And if we have this society based on identity rather than what you do, then we're going to pretty much break into tribes, and we're going to pretty much break into little pockets of Australians here, there, and they're all going to end up fighting with each other. So I think if we really want to have DEI, and this is a message absolutely to the AFL, include everybody. I mean, imagine if 10 or 12 Indigenous players had been slaughtered on Bondi Beach. I'll guarantee the AFL would have been up there, buses, truckloads, that have all been there. And I'm embarrassed for their position right now, because I think there's a number of them that don't think there's a problem in the JCOM with football. There is. I've got the emails, and they're not 5 or 6. There's a stack of emails and texts that are all saying exactly the same thing. Our kids, we don't know whether they're coming home in one piece, whether they're going to be traumatised from a football game. Now, I'm happy if we're abusing people because they're Pie supporters. As much as Eddie might, there's bigger things than the Pies.
Yep.
And I'm happy if we're blueing with people if they're on the opposition footy team, but not because of their heritage. And it's sort of close to home. It's like it's happening next door and it's happening down the road. And I thought there was a really classic example, and let me get you back to the email from the bomb shelter in Tel Aviv. But I thought there was a classic example of where this bloody government is right now. I mean, you get smiling Tony Burke. He had an all-time best 100-metre sprint for a photo op with the really brave Iranian soccer players that wanted to stay. Now, I'm not sure how many are left. Let's say there's 2 or 3.
About that.
Yeah. Well, those Iranian soccer players, young ladies, really courageous. They are now free in this country to go and play their sport. Free, safe, secure. You go down to a soccer ground here, or you go down to a football ground at a school with Australian Jewish soccer players, they're not safe. They're playing behind big fences. The Iranian girls, they have skills coaches. The JCOM girls, or boys, they've got armed guards. And this is all coming to me, and I'm actually processing all this stuff, and I'm thinking, is this Australia? And I know it's been going on for a while, but since October 7th, a few years ago, 2.5 years ago, it's all changed. It's gone back to criminal levels. I mean, I got emails saying my wife just got targeted on the road.
Really?
The wife and kid got targeted. Somebody just drove through. The police saw it. They had false number plates. Police can't track them down. I had an email from a bomb shelter from a guy in Tel Aviv. He said, Gerard, I'm now playing for the Tel Aviv Lions, and I feel safer in this war zone playing AFL footy than I did playing in Victoria over the last 3 years. And you know what, Gerard? There's 100 of me here right now, and there's 200 of me coming, and the mail around the world is Australia is not a great place to be a Jew or have Jewish heritage. And I keep looking at this stuff and reading it, and I think, my God, are we seriously going to put up with this crap for much longer? And that was why, when I said what I said on SEN, there was plenty of pushback about stay in your lane, Healy, get back in your box. And I thought to myself at the time, I'm 65, which box are they talking about? I'm going to end up in that box at some stage, I know, in the near future, but I think they actually meant the nicer box. But there was I assume there was some hate. I didn't see it, but I assume there was hate. And I spoke to Hutchie the next day and I said, mate, I'm sorry if that caused you any grief, but I just had to do it. If you want me to resign, I'm happy to resign. And it's a difficult thing for sport, but I didn't take a political position. I'm just talking about the defence of the Australian JCOM. I didn't want to make a public
It's a moral
statement.
position.
Yeah. And Hutchie couldn't have been more supportive. Could not have been more supportive. Hutchie's a good man, and he saw all the texts. He doesn't miss too many. And the vast majority of people have had a gutful. Mm. And I don't think the vast majority of people understand how bad it is. And from those emails, my admiration for the contribution that Australians with Jewish heritage have made to this country is extremely high. I mean, you're so far and above average as a community that came to this country seeking sanctuary. You put your heads down, at least your forebears. You put your heads down, or they did, and they were just so in love with this country that they've inbred into the Australian Jewish community this view that you have to give back because this country saved us.
Yep.
Mm.
I mean, it is. I know now it's inbred into the view of the Australian JCOM. How can we give back? How can we give back?
Yep.
And give back you have in bucket loads, in spades. And I keep reading these emails about how so many of the Australian JCOM are just so happy that their grandparents or their grandparents' parents are dead. So they didn't have to put up with the bullshit that has been foisted upon this country over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Now, I don't care if anybody's got strong political perspectives, but if you're going to have them, well, then get it right, but don't then bring it to Australia and don't bring it to Australians with Jewish heritage because it's not your fault. I mean, I'm not sure how many times or how hard a concept that is to process. What's happening in Gaza is not the Australian JCOM's fault. And yet you turn up to university, from what I'm told, it's well and truly your fault. You get abused, you get spat on, you get worse.
Yeah.
If you go to sport, you get the same thing. It's your fault. Somehow you're involved in a genocide. Somebody's business gets bombed. And this is where the government, both Victoria and Australian governments, been pathetic. No support whatsoever. Silence. Synagogues bombed. Silence. Businesses bombed or threatened out of profitability. No words of support, just silence. AFL football, tragedy in Bondi, bloody silence. It's an embarrassment, and I'm ashamed of my sport for its lack of action because you can't pick and choose on these things. It's too late to do the picking and the choosing. And all the AFL have said to me is that the JCOM are too hard. It's too hard an issue. So I might be wrong and I'm insulting a few people, but there's a new commissioner in, Craig Drummond. I'm hoping that Craig and Andrew, because I know Andrew is very much a man of great integrity, will collectively start making some changes and start putting it on the board, start doing some leadership. And my understanding is that Andrew is meeting with a few club presidents, and I believe there may be, hopefully, some other smart presidents getting on board. So it's time for change. I'm just hoping others will jump up and down, get your megaphone out, just like Albo did all those years ago. Get your megaphone out and just start screaming. We need some change, boys. It's not up to you guys. You don't want to be talking your own book. No one loves anyone talking their own book. That's why we need some more people, non-JCOM people, get on board and let's make some change in this country so we can be proud of our sport, proud of our country again, and just go to the footy and start bagging pie supporters.
Gerard, well, that was very beautifully said, and I think you've summed it up well from our perspective as well, because that was something that we very much felt that, you know, it would only get to this stage when it unfortunately happened in our own country. That was always the silent conversation around our tables. Has there been some form of silver lining to this that you have witnessed already? Some form of silver lining, some form of hope for change that you've seen?
I've just spoken to a couple of presidents. I spoke to a few and they've gone silent on me, but my understanding is they've taken it to the AFL. Didn't want to operate in isolation, and ultimately that was my objective. So as much as I'm a bit pissed off they didn't ring me direct and tell me that's what they're doing, that's okay.
Right.
They're good guys. I can deal with that. But this is about education. I mean, as I said, everyone's entitled to their view of what's going on over in the Middle East. But don't have a different view on what's happening here in Australia, because it's bloody disgraceful. What I find bizarre is that the fact that you've rolled up your sleeves as a group, particularly when you came to Australia in the 30s, getting away from pre-war Germany, 40s, Czechoslovakia, wherever you came from, getting away from the horrors of what Europe was about to go through. You've actually built this nation in many ways. You know, industry, jobs for so many people, wealth. You should be absolutely being heralded as great Australians and a great Australian contribution, not in some bizarre way used it as a negative. And I think, my God, let's hope that we get more people coming with Jewish heritage to this country, because they've set us an example of hard work, of absolute love of this country, philanthropy like you wouldn't believe, that has backed the arts with more money than you would ever believe, and the arts have gone like that to them. Well, it's only a matter of time before... Well, the AFL never do that, and footy will never do it, because ultimately, the heart of the footy, we love everybody in our footy group, but for some reason we've just had this mental block over the last 2 years of how hard you're doing it. And I'll guarantee you half of it is just total ignorance, that they don't know. Like most Australians don't know how hard you guys are doing it.
Gerard, there is a part of me that sometimes I always think about whether we would do things at a different point in our lives.
Yeah.
You know, with enough information, with enough perspective, would we still do the same decision? And I would love to know, for you, for someone who has a lot of moral clarity on this issue, do you feel like you are the sort of person that would have stood up maybe 20, 30 years ago for similar issues?
Some questions are just too hard to answer. I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know. As I said, I've always had a bit of a, I've always been sensitive to injustice. But, I can't say that I've ever acted on it as much as I have on this. So, but in Australia, this is something that I've rarely seen in Australia. I know a lot of kids who I went to school with were called wogs and this, and it hurt. I can still see the hurt in one of my best mates' eyes. I can still see it. I still remember it. And the pain those guys went through was horrendous. But as a community, for some reason, maybe it's just a passage of time, it just doesn't get said anymore. And we're such a better place. We're such a better country. And these guys just have normal livings. I mean, I went through that whole era when even the Bulldogs were calling themselves wogs in a take the piss sort of scenario. But it was still almost, and I wrote an article about it, it was a bit still uncomfortable for me, because it reminded me of all those days back when friends were being targeted in an Aussie off the cuff, it's okay, mate, cop it on the chin, blah, blah, blah. But it was bloody hurtful. But this is at a totally different level. This is like at a level where mum and dad doesn't know whether their boy or girl are coming back at all, let alone coming back mentally tormented. day after day after day, week after week. Now, fair dinkum, just have a think about that for 1 minute. You guys have lived it. I ask myself, and I say to my wife and other people, just think about that. Every day, you don't know whether your kid's coming home from school. You don't know whether the kid's going to be run over, or you don't know whether the kid's going to be tormented or going down the street just because he's wearing a yarmulke.
Yarmulke, yep, you've got it.
I had one on last night.
Oh, did you?
Still got it in the car, and I'm proud of it. Just because he got a yarmulke. Well, big deal. I mean, understand why people of the Jewish faith wear a yarmulke. Makes sense. How brave are they walking down the street with that symbol that may actually cause them harm? My admiration for the JCOM, Aussie JCOM, is so high. I cannot believe, and I didn't know this story 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, despite the fact that half my mates are Jewish, it's got nothing to do with this. I never see them as Jewish. They're just mates, they're Australians.
Yeah.
I've never, ever once called them Jewish. And I hope I never do. Because as much as Jewish is your heritage, and that's fantastic, I don't call Dipper Italian. It's just part of your history, and it may be part of your faith. And that's fine. Who cares? I was in the most beautiful synagogue yesterday, and I'm so proud of these gutsy people because they're still practicing their faith, even though they think that may cause them to be targeted. I mean, that is just... If that was a trend in football, you'd be hailed as the most courageous bastards in the country. Running back with a fly to the ball. Brilliant. And yet somehow this has all been turned around because of the Gaza war, because of Instagram, because of Facebook, and because of... I won't go into the political side of it, but whatever reason, it's been turned around and targeted against you guys as a collective. And it's not good enough. And fair dinkum, I'm not sure how our elbow sleeps at night. Calls the Royal Commission, takes him way too long. It's a truncated Royal Commission. You know where I'm going. I'm not going to go there. Seriously, Elbow. Come on. Let's make some changes. And if fair dinkum, this is my view, if the politics won't do it, well then I'm hoping that your average general Australian is going to. And my experience just walking down the street this morning, going to get a coffee, 2 people stop, keep going. Well, I'm saying to them back, you've got to keep coming. Let's go. You know, call it out. Because silence is no longer an option. It's a bit of a catch cry I'm hoping people will take on. Silence, if you see anti-Semitism in any shape, it's actually anti-Australian.
It is.
Call it out. Silence is no option. And there may be some pushback for those who speak up. Well, it's pushback that I'm more than happy to accept, and I'm sure most people will.
Gerard, before we wrap up, we have a closing tradition on the show.
Which is?
You have to earn a muffin.
Oh, I like it.
But
Jeez.
the question attached to whether you earn this muffin, it's called the sweet spot question.
Yep.
And the idea behind the sweet spot is we ask our guests, so in this case, what's something in the last, I would say, maybe let's start off for 2026. Is there any moment that has stayed with you in a very positive way, such that when you reflect on it, it gives you what we call like a warm, fuzzy feeling in the stomach, or it gives you just a sense of happiness or pleasure?
Well, I went to the St Kilda Synagogue, as you know, yesterday, and we ended up in the Kiddush.
Yes.
Fantastic. Just talking to people and meeting the JCOM right in its heartland was just beautiful. But what I did find out from the emails was some things that I would never have found out before. And that is that if I assimilate all the emails, everyone almost finished with, go Pies, go Swans, go this, go that, go here, go here. And probably the beautiful footy story was there's this gold guy called Jack Hamilton who was a fantastic Collingwood player. But he also was the most powerful man in footy right now. Back then, he graduated to the head of the VFL. and a very powerful man. But as much as his impact on football was great, his wife had an even bigger impact. His wife was a primary school teacher in the middle of Carlton. And her job officially was to be a teacher. Her unofficial job, from what I heard on the emails, was to be the chief indoctrinator. And every kid in the heart of Carlton that she taught became a Collingwood supporter.
Oh my goodness.
So she has impacted on the Magpie Army far greater than John Wren, than Jack Hamilton, than Eddie Maguire collectively. So well done to Jack Hamilton's wife. What a brilliant strategy from the Pies. They got all these Pie supporters from somewhere. Half of them are coming from the Carlton heartland. And Carlton have so many supporters themselves. But the things that I did learn, and also that I've got, and I don't get this one right too often, I've got 3 knuckers.
Oh, knuckers.
Knuckers.
Yes.
You got to get the in
I've
your
got
voice.
Bridget Knuckers. I've got Annabelle Knuckers. And I've got Louis Knuckers.
That's amazing.
Girls that give you great joy,
Oh, beautiful.
which they have done. So I've learned a lot, and I've learned about just how much people appreciate and love their family in the Jewish community. So no, I've been enriched more than, as much as the bad stuff I've learnt, I've been so enriched by those emails, by going to the Kiddush, meeting guys like you, meeting Chase and his brother, who do a bloody good. I sent his name to Waitley. I hope he gets a run. He's a pretty good. He
Watch
may
his
almost
face.
be smarter than the smartest man in footy.
Well, shout out to Doss and Toss podcast.
Doss
They
and
are
Toss,
listening.
yeah,
That's their finest work.
Anyway, that's enough of promoting them. They may be coping with you guys. But no, look, it's been a joy to meet a group of people I've never really got involved with, and the pleasure has been absolutely all mine.
Well, that's a beautiful sweet spot, Gerard, and thank you.
Do I get a muffin?
Yes,
you
you
get
do.
more than, mate. You can take as many as you want there, so go for it. Go for gold there, and absolutely. But thank you from the bottom of our hearts for joining the show, for speaking so beautifully about this and more. And we are so thrilled, and we are so happy to see you doing what you're doing, through and through about this, and in the footy space and beyond. And we're just so grateful. So thank you for coming on the show.
Boys, a great pleasure, but just remember, it's not your fight, it's our fight, and silence is no option.
Well said. Thank you, Gerard Healy.
Cheers.